Alabama Crimson Tide?
That's the game, and there were some key moments where, people will talk about the secondary playing poorly. I got to be honest, I saw quite a few instances where the defensive line got necessary pressure on Tua. Mm-hmm. The quarterbacks were in good coverage, and the only person that could have called it was the receiver. That first touchdown, I looked at that, and I'm thinking, how do you defend that? I saw Burke kind of come down on Bryce Thompson on the sidelines after that, but I thought Bryce Thompson had great coverage. Tua just made a beautiful throw. And so, really, just Tennessee, just like every other team this year, which is getting smoked by Alabama.
Well, 25 to nothing is Tua's touch. This is some sort of, Jalen Hurts is some sort of slouch or anything. But Tua, I mean, he's a favorite for the Heisman Trophy. I do think, however, there is a little bit. You said this right after the game, that you were wondering if this year's Alabama team, wasn't the greatest of all time. Now, you've had a few days to reflect on that. Caleb, were you getting caught up in the moment here, or what makes you think that they're better than, I don't know, those Notre Dame teams of the late 40s that would college football team ever?
Well, I didn't overreact on Saturday because I've actually been saying this for about 4 weeks now. There's two standards when you talk about best team ever. And I only look at the modern era, which I say post-integration for all schools, pretty much.
Okay, so 1972 on, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So, I would argue that there were some Grambling teams in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s under Eddie Robinson that could have, if you're looking at NFL talent, but if you're looking at greatest overall team cohesively, I would say 1995 Nebraska. Mm-hmm. And so Nebraska had 95 had the best college football team. Miami 2001 had the best overall talent on a college team. But I'm going to sit here and say that this Alabama team could end up having both. I mean, they started a little bit on defense in a couple of games this year, but we know that they're still loaded. I mean, again, it's a Nick Saban defense with a Heisman quarterback. I mean, what type of combination has ever been like that in college football before? And it is the equivalent of when Tom Osborne got Tommy Frazier, but again, that wasn't NFL talent. Tommy Frazier was just the perfect fit for what he was doing at Nebraska. So I think that this Alabama team is loaded with talent, and Nick Saban, a quarterback that's kind of the game manager. Don't forget that Tua takes a lot of chances. That no interception is incredible because it's not like he's making the safe throw every time.
Could it at all be an indication the SEC is a little down?
I thought the SEC was a little down when this year started, and I do agree with that. And Louisville is also not what we thought too, which is why, and yes, that is a reason Nick Saban has been blowing everybody out. But, as down as the SEC is, and I actually agree it's a little down. If we're comparing the greatest teams of all time, I still think Alabama's road is tougher than 1995. The Big 12 hasn't even formed yet. Mm-hmm.
No, I would understand where you're going with that, certainly. And the Big East always had the reputation of being the sixth best conference, and Miami a big fish in a small pond. Maybe there was competition from West Virginia or Virginia Tech, but after that, hit or miss, let's just put it that way. We're talking to Caleb Calhoun of allfortennessee.com. Wrap right way. Now, I never singled any one individual out. I know in talking to you off the air, you were saying, well, the offensive line, I think everybody would agree with that. But he also, during his press conference on Monday, indicated that, well, it looked like Jared Guarantano had made more mistakes, he thought, in that game than he had the entire season before. Did you get that sense that Guarantano was one of those players not doing it the right way?
Yeah, I think what he was talking about with players not doing things the right way, I don't think he was talking about effort. I think he was, or lack of focus. I think he was just talking about making too many mistakes. But I would say that Jared Guarantano, that probably was his first game that I really could single him out. I mean, I know that I don't necessarily that first drive, say for instance, the very first play, he had a perfect pass over the middle and threw it low. And that could have been a huge game, and that was the very first offensive play. 2 plays later, he fumbles the ball. I know that, again, I talked about the offensive line was the reason for that fumble, but I do like to quote Denzel Washington from Remember the Titans when he says, your blockers have nothing to do with you fumbling the football. wasn't his fault that he got rushed right there. It's always your fault when you fumble.
That's a good point. But Keller Chris came off the bench in what seemed to be a hopeless situation. Obviously didn't pull the game out, but put a couple of touchdowns on the board. Looked good in doing so. And I guess if Pruitt is talking about, I'm going to recruit 25 guys, but was Guarantano for saying, geez, I didn't like the way that guy played during his press conference. Does that mean that there is a quarterback controversy at Tennessee? Because it would seem to me that, if you're talking about almost like that old John McKay line, I will cut him, baby, I will cut him. And that seemed to be the theme of Jeremy Pruitt. Then wouldn't you suggest that, you'd change the quarterback to the guy who was effective?
I don't think it's too much of a controversy. I am actually going to write a little bit later today that the only controversy would be if Jerry Garantano is not fully 100%. I think you do go with Keller Chris, but Pruitt's been pretty sure to Garantano because I think you and I both agreed that Chris was the better quarterback and had every reason to believe that before the season started, and he looked more accurate on Saturday. So the only reason he could be starting Garantano over Chris is so he could actually build some experience with him for the future. So I think Pruitt is thinking about Garantano for the future. I think he may have said that to motivate him a little bit or to try to push him a little harder. But again, I don't think it was a lack of effort from Garantano on Saturday. Again, I just think that he just made a couple of mistakes that he hadn't made in the past.
We're talking to Caleb Calhoun of All for Tennessee, who is, pretty good analysis right there of the Guarantano situation. But also, let's just talk about I got to bring in 25 new. A junior college wide receiver, all the headlines here is that he decommitted from Ole Miss after he made a visit to Knoxville. I guess that if he made a visit to Knoxville after giving a verbal commit to Ole Miss, the people in Oxford had to know something was up. His name is Javonte Payton, and while he hasn't signed with he hasn't made a commitment to the Vols, it would seem to be a positive sign here. On the other hand, you're luring a player away from Ole Miss. You're not luring a player away from Alabama or Florida. What did you think about the Javonte Payton situation?
I don't think it's a bad thing. I actually remember Javonte Payton being recruited a couple of years ago when Butch Jones was still there. So he was a pretty highly regarded recruit. I think that he, again, loves to throw the ball around, and you could get a lot of yards and a lot of primetime spotlight playing at Ole Miss. Again, I think it is good news for the Vols. They lost out on Trey Knox to Arkansas, but it came out that it doesn't sound like Pruitt was that interested in Trey Knox towards the end. And I thought he was, which is why I made all my predictions that he would end up in Tennessee. But everything I had read after that was he was rated a 4-star, but he was barely a 4-star. And a lot of high-profile coaches didn't want him. So I think that Javonte Payton is a good replacement for that, particularly when, although we say that, but he is a junior. So I'm not sure why he went the junior college route. Is going the junior college route for receivers. But again, it doesn't hurt to have an extra guy in there.
If he signed. He visited, he said, maybe not Ole Miss, but he didn't say, I'm going to Tennessee either. He may, for all you know, go to Mississippi State or Tennessee or, for that matter, I don't know, Stony Brook. You don't know where, he decommitted from Ole Miss after visiting UT. That seems to be a positive for UT, but nothing's official just yet. So, Peyton could go just a lot of places, I suppose, that sort of, by the way, you mentioned that Butch Jones was, he was the first guy to try to bring in Peyton to Tennessee. A lot of people have been commenting, about Butch Jones smoking the cigar after the victory. Of course, he's a consultant to the offense. Low for Jones. Mark Nagy, a lack of class. My favorite, and I think it's the healthy way, Joe Rexrod saying he couldn't care less. He's with the Crimson Tide now. You smoke a cigar after you beat Tennessee. Tennessee does the same thing when they beat Alabama those many years ago. What was your take on the Butch Jones return?
I wrote a piece on this. I said it was classic because of his season-ending injury, and he went out of his way to talk to a lot of former players. If you looked at the video on the sideline after Alabama won, but then yes, there was the Gatorade bat, and the posing for the pictures for the cigars. I found it almost more embarrassing than Bush League. Normally, I wouldn't mind it, but what I thought, and the point that Howard Haynesworth of all people made was, the reason that Butch Jones got to smoke that victory cigar is because he beat a team that he ran into the ground over 5 years.
Well, let me just say year and better things for the next 2 years. Remember, see this guy's from New Jersey. His dad played for Butch Jones at Rutgers. He was a star receiver for the Scarlet 5 years ago when Jones was an assistant there.
So different than it is in blocking for a pro style. By the way, the Seattle Seahawks learned that with the turmoil in the strength department while he was there. And then obviously there was the poor coaching on its own, which led to a lot of guys poorly coached right now. And I mean, we can all see it when we watch it.
How long until Butch Jones is not blamed for Tennessee misfortunes if they were to continue? I mean, if say Tennessee goes 6-6 next year, when do they stop blaming Butch Jones for losses?
Oh, I think always you stop blaming a previous coach by year 2, with some exceptions. Consider next year. I mean, rolling by at least being in contention for the top 25.
Okay.
And so. The only exception I'd ever made was Derek Dooley because Fuller and then Lane Kiffin and all the attrition that came with that and the probation or the NCAA investigation. I mean, he coached his first 2 years with one exception. Another one would be, and you know about this more than me, is the mess that Frank Beamer inherited at Virginia Tech years and years ago.
That was a long time ago, yeah. And I guess it took him a little bit of time. I mean, sometimes it takes... coaches time. I think Joe Paterno's first team at Penn State was 5-5. So, I mean, you think about that too. I mean, Carolina was installed as a 7-5. Oh, that's not necessarily out of the realm of possibility. What do you look for in the South Carolina game? Caleb Calhoun of allfortennessee.com.
I'll play a Will Muschamp game for once. But in all honesty, I would say that the biggest thing I would say with the South Carolina game is, again, this is the, if I'm right, like the 4th straight game where Tennessee is playing an elite defense.
There you are, yeah.
You had Kevin Steele who worked for Saban, and actually for Jimmy Pruitt, we had Nick Saban himself at Alabama, and now you got Will Muschamp. So I want to see. We've seen enough that Garantano can stand and take hits in the pocket, but the big thing now is if he is starting, can Tennessee get any running game going at all in this game? And I mean, it could be harder to get a running game going in this game than it was even in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, South Carolina does have a good run defense. And they've got, I think, a superior pass rush to Tennessee as well. Certainly the stats bear that out.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So, I think that we've looked for them for the last 3 weeks because they're not really, it's not that different of a defense. He's not a Saban protege, but he runs a similar style of defense in the 3-4. So this is another very similar attacking defense Tennessee's going to face. So you kind of look for the same thing from the offense, where I think the big thing is they, again, need to air it out deep downfield and let their receivers make plays. I mean, say what you want, but even last week against Alabama, they were able to make a few plays when they did that. Juwan Jennings is the first 100-yard receiver against the Tide all year. That's a bigger positive than the second straight pick six.
Yeah, no, that definitely is. You're reciting coincidence here. Do we even want to remember the pick Go. You remember what Golden did after he scored? I mean, give me a break on that. You're romanticizing that. It's just that one sent me up a wall, to be honest with you, Caleb Calhoun, allfortennessee.com. But you look. I know you're not the biggest Will Muschamp fan in the world, but he is 6-0 against Tennessee. How do you get to be 6-0 against Tennessee?
I'm sorry. Did you say how do you get to be 6-0?
So how does he?
Honestly, you have to take it on an individual.
Protege, Sal Sinceri's son. You're aware of that, aren't you? Staff.
Oh, okay. Actually, I think I did read about that.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. But yeah, and also the mentally weak spots of Tyler Brady, whereas every time he got down in the fourth quarter, he kind of checked out. And then 2013 was Butch Jones making the ridiculous decision to try to set Nathan Peterman up to fail and blame Justin Worley against Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was 2014, the 9-0 game. Mike Hyken at the time decided to air it out with Justin Worley in the second half, which caused his 3 turnovers. 2016 with Josh Dobbs and at South Carolina, that game, 2016, was the turning point in Butch's career because that was the first game that he lost that signified that this program that assured that they would underachieve in 2016. And that was a bad one. And I remember Josh Dobbs had 2 finals that week. And on top of that, Mike DeBoer again decided to rely on the passing game to beat Muschamp, which I didn't understand because if you just run the ball and avoid the turnovers, they actually win that game. But then the injuries in the secondary with Jake Bentley, and then last year you just had, he had that. They were coming off the bye, and it was supposed to be the best bye week ever.
Yeah, they came 1 yard short, that sort of thing. The South Carolina fans wearing the Keep Butch Jones shirts. I thought that was kind of original, to tell you the truth. Hey, one last question here, and I got two, but before I get to Tennessee, I'm running out of time here, being ranked number 6 in the country in the preseason basketball poll, which just quickly, I mean, that seems about right, don't you think? Nothing really controversial there. Any take on that?
Yeah, it does seem, and I keep saying this, for anybody that thinks this year is just a given for success because of last year, Texas that had these type of expectations. The year he got fired, Texas was a top 10 team and had everybody back, and also added a 5-star recruit, and they ended up stumbling and having a horrible season. And so, now granted, luckily for Barnes this year, he brought in a couple of guys. He brought in DJ Burns, but there's really nobody that he's going to insert into the starting lineup from last year that would mess up the chemistry. So that's the one good thing for the Vols. But I'm just saying that Rick Barnes has not always followed up overachieving years as well as you would think. And his Texas year.
Barnes that I'm a little upset with. I loved how Butch Jones would make sure, and Butch Jones, listen to me, Pearl would make sure that the Vols were scheduling games all over the state, including against mid-major opponents. And it looks like it might be another 53 years before the Vols play in Johnson City again, and I don't think that's right. Anyway, the one last thing I want to just say, I've said this since I've been on the show. I kind of think that South Carolina and Tennessee, possibly Missouri, but South Carolina and Tennessee are something of barometer programs for each other. In the SEC East hierarchy, and I know this is painful for Vols fans, but I do kind of think it's Florida and Georgia. That's where the players are, and they're probably in years ahead now that the TV money has evened everything out. Those are going to be pretty much year in, year out the teams to the outside, and a lot of it turns out that it's going to be either Tennessee or South have. We saw this with Spurrier, and really we saw this also when Phil Fulmer would beat Lou Holtz every year more than a decade ago or so. And I just was kind of curious, do you kind of see that sort of being a bellwether on where the programs are, the Tennessee-South Carolina game that I do, or am I putting too much stock into this?
Well, it's funny because Paul Feinbaum and the SEC Media Day crew talked about this at SEC Media Day this past summer. They said that, and they were right, because Tennessee long-term should have higher goals than South Carolina, but right now, South Carolina is a barometer. I mean, this game on Saturday, well, actually, I take that back. This game on Saturday is not a barometer. Next year's game is a barometer. This game, Tennessee.
South Carolina's struggling, but they still have Bentley to Sweeney, and did beat Missouri. So, aside from the fact that Kentucky has become their Alabama, what are you going to say here? Okay, it's Caleb Calhoun, allfortennessee.com. Read Caleb Calhoun, because when you read Caleb Calhoun, you get the journalistic dope. You don't get that everywhere else. You'll find him on allfortennessee.com. I'll be back with the rankings of the state high school football rankings after this.